there's a word that you've heard since 4th grade, 5th grade, something like that. It's common denominators. And what common denominators is basically the technique that we have to use for adding fractions which do not have a common denominator. You have to turn them into things with common denominators. You can't just add 5/6 and 4/9 together easily. If they were both sixths, like if this were just, 5/6 plus 4/6, no problem, right? You just get 9/6. But when it's ninths, that changes things around a bit. So what you have to do is you have to turn these fractions into something else that looks like it has the same denominator. And that involves multiplying by something called a crazy one. Now, this question is not actually asking us for the sum. It doesn't actually want us to go ahead and do the summation. Instead, it wants to know, well, what is that common denominator? And the easiest way to find a common denominator is just to multiply the two denominators together. 6 times 9. Okay? 6 times 9 is 54. And then you look over at this list and you say, well, wait a minute, what happened? The 54 is not on there. Well, the problem is, or the reason for this is, there's all sorts of things that would be common denominators. They don't necessarily have to be a simple multiplication of the two denominators. Okay, 6 times 9 would be a common denominator, but there's other ones too. Now, we can rule out some things. Obviously, 5 is not a common denominator because there's nothing that 5 has in common with 6 and 9. 6 seems like a good common denominator for one part of this thing, but it's not going to work for 9 because 9 is bigger than 6. So we can also rule that out. Now, these other ones I want to think about in terms of, are they multiples of 6 and 9? So, for example, 18. Okay, 18 is equal to 6 times 3, and it's also equal to 9 times 2. So 18 is a common denominator, or it could be considered a common denominator. How about 36? Well, 36 is equal to 6 times 6. It's also equal to 9 times 4. So looks like 36 also works. 90, certainly not the least common denominator. Remember that word? The least common denominator would be the smallest one. I think 18 is probably the least we can get away with. But 90 works because 90 is just 6 times 15, and it's also 9 times 10. So even 90 is considered a common denominator. For that matter, 900 or 9,000 would be common denominators. Not the least common, but they would all three of these answers would work.